For brands to be discoverable in AI, we have to think about what behavior is today. I mean, we're all there now where we've at least use it as an input to shape our own opinions. Not even yet in purchase or marketing. It's become part of our lives now. And I think marketers need to think about what that behavior is as a factor of building trust and consideration. And what I'm thinking about a lot and advising my clients on is to really choose the role that they want to play, particularly with Agentic AI. You could think about Agentic AI in lots of different ways, but I think there's opportunities to consider whether or not you want to be more of an advisor, meaning you just help make better decisions, where the consumer purchase is already some intention already behind it. And that's where AI just plays a smaller role. The medium role is more as the full-on assistant, where the consumer has a little bit to do with it, but AI is really picking up and gathering and sorting some information. Then there's one that's more AI as the operator, where consumers like, no, you help me. You do all the work, you gather, you collect. And I think in each one of those, there's a different moment of consideration for the brand and different ways of thinking about how you present your story. So I think for brands to be considered and trusted in this time, I think it's important to understand what role you're going to play. And that's one of the first things I think marketers should really be considering as they're planning how to use AI.
Karin, let's break down the approaches to agentic commerce and the changes that come with it that brands need to be cognizant of. Particularly, I'm thinking about the ways that it requires brands to think more differently about content, reviews, lifestyle, brand story, etc. How do you help brands assemble the right content to build trust with AI systems?
You know, I've really been a strong proponent of content marketing well before this era of AI. I actually built content marketing units inside of companies as well as partnerships with content companies. I worked in 2 Hollywood studios. I worked in the largest internet portal making content. So content's always been sort of part of the DNA. But I think with what's happened with social media and creators has been a seismic change, and that's super important. But I think something that's got a little bit lost, that in the era of AI needs to have a resurgence and might be a darling of AI, is comms and PR. Because LLMs, particularly those that are really biased for recency, really rely on current news. And there's really no function like comms to kind of gather the story. And so what I'm suggesting for those companies that haven't yet fully integrated, and I mean even Corp Comm, because the CEO now is one of the best brand ambassadors of your business. And so I think it's really important for comms to be a part of the organizing principle across all of this work.
Karin, let's also circle back to the points you made about the need to establish trust. Trust is obviously critical when AI makes purchase recommendations on behalf of consumers. How do you think about brand safety and authenticity in agentic environments with that trust foundation?
I think brand safety and trust is still pretty emerging with AI. I think there's a lot of moving pieces to this. I don't think we can call it complete as a understanding right now. Then again, I remember this exact question coming up with every other technological innovation. So you probably kind of remember all the questions we would ask around social media. And back then, at the very birth of social media, I think the proper approach, which I would leverage here in AI, is to have a cross-functional view. The marketers, legal, operations, your external partners, everybody who really could have something to do with whether it's the product promise all the way through to pricing, whatever it is that you need, that there's a group that kind of defines what the parameters should be that would inform how AI leverages new technologies. And I think that cross-functional way is the way to go. I think if it sits within one group, it kind of misses some other piece. I think this is the right time, kind of like the birth of a social media practice, to make sure that the inputs are pretty complete, and so that the trust and the consideration really fit together.
Karin, the purchase path has always kind of zigzagged, always looked a little jagged, and obviously despite the promise, agentic systems are obviously adding new levels of complexity to all of that. How do brands actually create seamless experiences across AI platforms and direct channels, given that the history of the purchase path has again been just so rocky?
Yeah, I think there's always been a lot of debate about, is it a funnel, is it a zigzag in terms of customer journeys? You know, it's really kind of funny. I think at the end of the day, what's important is to really look at what the customer experience actually is. To some degree, I was thinking about my own personal experience with AI. It looks pretty seamless. Like, it's a good experience. I don't see all the back end, right? But I think in order to make that super seamless for a brand, that's what I talk about, a cross-functional kind of point of view, and assume it's going to get collapsed, and assume that all of the presentation of what brand is being considered, what kind of offers are going to be available, are all collapsed. It's not going to be in various different stages. It already isn't. So I think that's a really important note, is that it's really kind of all connected now, and that the presentation from the consumer perspective looks pretty seamless. But I think for marketers in particular, I think the focus needs to be on where the data and infrastructure meets around the customer. I think that first-party data is an important protective measure that many companies may be handing away in favor of being involved in larger platforms and systems, and that has to be balanced out with the business benefit. But I think at the end of the day, the data and the infrastructure behind the scenes to get that done is the focus. But in some ways, the consumer is really going to kind of drive it. Like, if it's not working for them, they're just going to abandon.
Karin, to kind of pull things together, I wanted to get a sense of where brands are most vulnerable when it comes to agentic commerce. Is it, as we discussed, discovery, trust? Is it transaction experience, or is it something else entirely?
So it might be something else entirely. I think this idea that one company's vulnerability is another company's opportunity. So for example, a larger player may have very complex systems to revise in an AI era that a challenger can maybe do very quickly. I've certainly seen that with some of my clients that are earlier stage companies that can go very quickly, and they don't really wait. They're just native to this system. But then on the flip side, those earlier stage companies don't have scale and breadth of offering. So I do think that it's a very interesting time where larger companies don't necessarily have an advantage and have to really go quickly. But I go back to my recommendation about a very clear perspective on what role the brand wants to play. Do they want to be an advisor? Do they want to be an assistant? Do they want to be an operator? That can help guide that cross-functional team idea so that the team can actually do something and execute quickly and not wait.